Hello there folks, and welcome to another episode of In the Workshop. I'm Peter here to answer some of your customer questions today, and it's a pleasure to be back here face to face, giving you some hints and tips and answering your queries. So today's In the Workshop video, it's the 18th of May 2022, and we've been back at the nursery a couple of weeks from the Malvern Spring Festival, where we were awarded a silver gilt medal for our exhibit. So that was fantastic. It was lovely to be back at the flower shows again. That's our only flower show for this year. We're not doing Chelsea because we've a relatively new young team in the nursery. We want to just get our feet under the table. We don't want to overstretch ourselves. So no Chelsea for us this year, just the Malvern Spring Festival. We're hoping also to go to the Malvern Autumn Festival in September, so we might well see you there. We have a couple of open days coming up at the nursery. Although we're predominantly mail order, we do have a special event weekend coming up on the 11th and 12th of June. So this is the year 2022. If you're watching in the future, don't think it's coming up. So this is June 2022. The 11th and 12th is actually the Ashton Open Gardens weekend. So that's the village we're in, Ashton Underhill. I'll put a link in the description of the video to the website with our event details. And let's get going. So let's have a look at the first question here. We've got a question here from Madeline. And Madeline has a wisteria on the side of her house. Unfortunately, some of the roots began to lift the patio stone flags, and they cut one of the roots, I beg your pardon, following advice. They cut one of the roots, and that has caused the wisteria to die. They'd like to put some clematis up the wisteria framework that remains. And what clematis would be good for this? A nice continuous flowering period would be good. Yes, I understand what you're looking for there. Yes, some do say they have a long flower period, some clematis, but they are indeed, as you say, often the more compact patio types. So let me suggest one or two long flowering clematis that will give a fairly consistent period of bloom. Probably one of my first recommendations would be the Clematis Princess of Wales. This is a large flowered clematis, and not to be confused with Princess Diana, the little tulip shaped clematis, which many people are familiar with, but I'm talking about the large flower clematis, Princess of Wales. This is beautiful. It is long flowered. It has two periods of flower, the first of which is in May and June, followed by a secondary period of flower from late July to early September time. Now what you do is you allow the plant to make a body of growth up onto your wisteria. When the first flowers finish in sort of May to June time, trim the dead heads, give it a little bit of tomato fertiliser about once every fortnight, and that will encourage her to flower again much more strongly later on for you as well. So Princess of Wales, Pilu is another variety that flowers nice and consistently, gives two distinct strong periods of flower. Pilu is not quite so vigorous in height, making perhaps 6 to 7 foot. Princess of Wales probably about 8 foot, so a little bit taller. If you wanted to go more vigorous again, you could consider one of the Tanguticas. We have a variety called Orange Peel. And orange peel is a wonderful clematis. It flowers very long period from about July through to October. Quite consistent through that period as well. It's a little yellow bell-shaped bloom, and when the flower has finished, it's got a beautiful seed head as well, which can be left all winter, and it looks really pretty with a frost on it. So there we are. There's a few thoughts for you. Princess of Wales, Pilu, and also the Tangutica Orange Peel. So that's there for Madeline. Madeline, thank you for your question. Hope that's helpful for you. Okay, here's a message from Greg and Emily. Greg and Emily, we met at the Malvern Spring Festival. So, hello again. Now, you kindly sent me a photo. So, ladies and gentlemen, you can't see the image, I can. But I needed the photo to be a little more certain what I was recommending. And so, Greg and Emily have a it's a north-facing wall, but it's somewhere that is, I can now see from the picture, relatively open, relatively bright. It's not getting any direct sun, but it's a good aspect, so it's fine. I can recommend a few that will do well here for you. So let me give you a little list. I'll put links to all these clematis in the description as well, so anything I list here, I'll try and remember to get the name down in the description of the video just below. All right, so clematis I think will do well for you. I've shortlisted a few here already. Prince Charles, superb clematis, excellent for the situation you've got. Also, Blue Angel, Andromeda, it's a lovely variety with a big, larger flower. Dawn is superb for twin flowering periods, May to June and August to September. Dutch Sky is a lovely plant. That's really, really pretty, prolific in the amount of flower it produces as well. Fair Rosamond is very nice. It's a larger flowered white with a lovely wine red anther. Hurgleby White, it's pronounced Hurgleby. Its name it's typed or spelled Haggleby, but it's Hurgleby, which is a park in Sweden where it was discovered. So that's a beautiful Viticella, Hurgleby White. Peniel is very pretty, will do nicely in a shady aspect. It's also got a nice bit of colour to it. So you want something to brighten the place up, brighten that space. It doesn't have to be a white flower, but Peniel is a bicolour bloom, so you've got white and a lovely coloured margin to it as well. And Toki. Toki's a wonderful creamy white, so again, not a pure white, because whites can disappear in a shady spot, but Toki's a lovely creamy white. So hopefully, Greg and Emily, that's a helpful little list for you. I'll tag you in the video reply. Okay, so Janet has asked, could we send a new catalogue when it's published? And I've left this in here deliberately. We've got a new colour illustrated catalogue coming in mid-June, so it will be here in time for our open weekend, and you can pre-order your catalogue on the website. So link in the description. Once again, you get onto the website, get your copy ordered, and as soon as they're printed, we'll slip them in an envelope and get it onto your doormat. So do hop on there. Janet, I've got your address. I'll sort that out for you. Okay, who have we got here? Andy Long. Oh yes, Andy, you've had some difficulties with your sea breeze. So Clematis sea breeze, Andy's had this for a short while. It started to grow quite strongly by the looks of things. Some of the stems have started to wilt back gradually, which is causing concern, and is looked more carefully now, and it appears that almost all the stems are doing this. But what's interesting to me and what's useful, thank you Andy, is that it's happening gradually, it seems. So from your description, I think it's happening stem by stem rather than all at once. So that's quite important. It's useful because if it were Clematis wilt, it would be all of the stems doing it very quickly. Because you're saying, again, from what I understand, from what you're saying, is stem by stem happening, that's more likely to be something else. Now, also in your email, you mentioned that you are watering frequently and feeding it weekly with an all-purpose liquid feed. I think you might be killing it with kindness, Andy. Once a fortnight should be ample for your clematis, and if we overfeed, it can cause certain elements like magnesium to be locked out of the plant, and it causes the plant to not be able to process other nutrients within its systems as efficiently. So I think we could be slightly overwatering. sorry, overfeeding, I mean to say. I think what we can do, cut the feeding out, and I would also then cut back the affected stems, but leaving around 12 to 18 inches of stem so that it has growth that it can reshoot from. I think that's the key here. Maybe we're just overdoing that feeding a bit too much, I'm afraid, Andy. So I hope that's helpful. I hope you cut that feeding out and give the plant a chance to regrow, reshoot. That will be a great boost for it. You could give it a little bit of Epsom salts, which will help it rejuvenate because Epsom salts is high in magnesium, and that will help the plant take up other nutrients. So a bit of Epsom salts, horticultural Epsom salts. Okay, Andy, let's move on. Sumitra, Peter, you gave a very interesting talk for Chalfont St Giles Garden Association a few months back, and I did, yes. It was a lovely talk, and you were a lovely club to speak for. I enjoyed my trip down to see you. And we need to purchase 2 evergreen plants, one to flower October, to whenever it can be taken over by a second plant, which should finish around April. Lovely. Okay, so you're looking for winter evergreens, something for October through to late winter, and then winter into spring. So I would be looking at probably Freckles would be my first recommendation. Cerosa Freckles is a wonderful evergreen clematis that flowers October to February. It's strong and it's free flowering, and it thrives and flowers with very little care, really. So Freckles would be my first recommendation. Then to carry on from that, probably something like Apple Blossom, which is one of the Armandii. There are several Armandii, but Apple Blossom is one of my favourites. It has a lovely pink bud which opens to a white flower with the faintest hint of pink on it, but it has a lovely scent, and it blooms March, April, May. So you'd have, between those 2 plants, you'd have flowers from roughly October through to about April, early May on 2 plants, both of them evergreen. So, Sumitra, yes, I do indeed remember you very well, and your husband. You were delightful. I hope that's helpful for you. Links to those plants in the description. Okay, Holly, I wonder if you'd be so kind as to help me. My clematis usually spreads and is amazing across the whole of the front of my house, but this year is very woody and not flowering. It is the USP, unique selling point of our house, and we are desperate to try to help it. Okay, lovely. Don't worry, Holly, we can help you here. Now, it sounds, if it's that vigorous, probably it's a Montana. And I think probably what you're finding is not uncommon. This year we've had a lot of customers saying this. The Montanas and their Alpina macropetala types of clematis often have built up a lot of growth. You might have the sort of wall of your house, but then they build up many, many layers over the years of stems. So you get a lot, a big body of growth, a great mass of it, and the underneath stuff can be very dead, and all you have is a little bit of green on the outside. So you're not alone. That's not much of a consolation, I'm sure, but we can help you overcome it. And now is a great time of year to be doing this as well. So I would, rather than cut a Montana down, I would cut it back. So I would start at the outside, and I would be removing all the layers of growth back to the original arterial stems that are on the wall or fence, or wall of your house. So, or whether it was a fence. So you just cut back the layers, cut back gradually through the layers, but leave the large arterial stems. So you want this sort of framework of strong arterial stems left on the wall for it to reshoot from and regrow from. Now, obviously, there's always a risk with cutting back these established, mature plants like this. But at the end of the day, you have to ask yourself, yeah, it's got 2 chances, and if it's looking a bit ropey as it is, then probably best to get this done. It's got the rest of the summer through which to reshoot and regrow and ready for next year to give you wonderful flowers again. So do that now. We're in mid-May. Get that done now, and then I would give it a bit of a feed. So perhaps a good handful of bone meal to establish a strong root again, and a bit of Epsom salts once again to give it a boost. All right. So yeah, get that done. The Epsom salts, I tend to, you mix it into a watering can and water it on to the soil. You sometimes it will recommend to put it onto the foliage. In this case there is none, so just put it onto the root and do that a couple of times about 2 weeks apart. All right, so Holly, I hope that's helpful. I hope your plant reshoots strongly for you and looks wonderful once again. Davina, we have emailed a few times lately, and so yes, lovely to be in touch with you again, and thank you. The show did go really well for us. That's been really good. Whilst we've been away, I've been scanning more of your clematis pictures. Can I advise for a pink, purple or burgundy clematis that has a very long flowering time for a 6-foot fence? Want it to grow with a white star jasmine and Andromeda on the same trellis. Fantastic. Okay, Davina, we can do that for you. That's a pleasure. I did a little shortlist here again earlier. I think some that I can recommend for you. I have listed down here Bourbon. Bourbon's a wonderful clematis. Will give the perfect height for what you're looking for, and it's a really nice, striking, rich, almost sort of burgundy red, and a long flowering period too. Very hardy and disease and pest resistant, and it would look absolutely super with Andromeda because Andromeda's got that lovely deep raspberry bar to it. So Bourbon would really bring out that raspberry bar because of its deep colour. Purples, perhaps consider Romantica. That could be a nice variety to go here with them. Romantica's a lovely long flowering clematis, is a good companion plant and not too overpowering. It doesn't swamp its host. So Romantica's a very good variety indeed. And I think, let me give you one more. Green Passion. Green Passion. It's a bit of a... It's what I call a Marmite plant. You either love it or you hate it. But Green Passion's a beautiful, it's a full double greeny cream flower with little flecks of white to it. It flowers in May to June, and then later in the summer it will flower again in August and September. And those flowers will be a little bit more white, predominantly white, with little flecks of green around the margins. So that could do rather well for you, I think. So there's a few thoughts. And earlier on, I think I mentioned Pilu. Pilu could do well there for you as well. If Andromeda's doing nicely, Pilu would also be a lovely companion to Andromeda. So there we are, Davina. I hope that's helpful and that you like some of those suggestions. Pilar says, please, which are your favourite clematis for a garden wall, as I don't know if it's better a deciduous or evergreen variety, or a group 1, 2 or 3. Okay, my garden is facing southwest. Right, Pilar, I've got a list for you as well, pre-prepared. Here's some varieties that will do really nicely for you, and I think they'll like your aspect as well. So, Prince Charles is a fantastic clematis, will go on almost any aspect very well. It is one of my favourites because it's such a simple plant to grow. You don't have to fuss over it. You don't need to take any particular sort of time over feeding it or anything like that. Prince Charles will thrive with very little care whatsoever. Also, I've noted down for you Supernova. and Super Night. They're two sister plants, both from the family Viticella. These are wonderfully free-flowering clematis, extremely easy to grow, and yeah, very, very hardy too. And again, kind of my favourites really. Supernova especially is really, really pretty. I think perhaps let's just give you one further variety as well. I'd noted down here Vicky. Vicky is a wonderful pink. It's a long and consistent flowering plant, which gives a flowering period of sort of May semi-continuously through to September. Very easy to grow and really, really charming, but quite vibrant pink flower with a golden anther in the centre. So Vicky as well. Okay, so don't forget again, names in the description for you. And let's have another one here. Adrian, righty-ho. Adrian, yes, you had a concern about your HF Young. That's right. Now, Adrian has sent me a really helpful picture here, and it is fascinating to see. So his concern is that he's got two plants of the same variety, HF Young. One is growing quite rapidly and making lots of growth, and the other is quite compact, and it's got flower bud. But I can see what's happening is some of the stems, what you've got is the stems growing upwards, creating leaf, but the actual terminal growth in the middle, if you like, so the terminal growth in the centre has stunted and stopped growing. It's no longer making height. That can happen sometimes when a plant is, firstly, if it's unhappy, it might be something to do with the root. Perhaps it's just a little bit too wet at the root. That can happen. Perhaps the plant can also be that the plant has just simply decided, right, I'm in flowering mode and I'm going to give you buds and blooms, and I'm not going to grow until the flowering is finished. And that is not uncommon for these group 2 varieties like HF Young. Of course, when the flower is finished, you're going to probably just prune at least the dead heads off, if not cut the plant back just lightly to encourage it to reshoot strongly, make new growth through the summer months, and then give you a second flowering later on in the year. Now, as I say, it's not unusual to see this happen even in the same variety, and as Adrian's got them, two plants within a matter of feet of one another and acting in quite different ways. That's not uncommon. We hear of people who have got two of the same variety, one on one side of an arch, one on the other side of an arch. One grows much taller than the other. Why exactly that is, it's usually something to do with the soil, but hopefully as the plant establishes and matures over the course of this year and early next year, that'll all get worked out and the plants will settle down and perform much more evenly for you in the future. So with the group 2s, I often say first year is roots, second year is shoots, and the third year is when you get all your flowers. So the first year they create a lot of strong new root under the ground. You often can't see them doing much, but don't be alarmed, they're making a good base from which to grow from in future. The second year they're creating lots of new shoots, lots of new healthy growth, on which the third year you're going to get all that lovely bloom. Okay, I hope that's reassuring, Adrian. I would cut out the dead flower heads as the blooms go over. The stems that have made leaf but then stopped and what we call stunted, I would cut those back to the leaf joint below. So where the top leaf joint is that's stunted, I cut it to the leaf joint below, just above, and that will encourage it to reshoot and grow strongly for you. Hope that's helpful, and let us know how you get on. It's always fascinating to hear how plants recover, hopefully, after our advice, because we're still learning too. We want to see and hear how you're doing. Right, next one down on the list. We have here Basil. Oh, Basil. Yes, I wanted to end with Basil's email. Thank you, Basil. You've sent me a lovely photograph of your Clematis Dorothy Tolva. And I'm so grateful because we get a lot of photographs from customers with their plants established in their gardens, and it's so lovely to see. It's so rewarding for us as the nurserymen to see how our plants are establishing and doing for you in your gardens. Dorothy Tolver, as it happens, is very close to my heart because she was my grandmother. And the plant was raised by my grandfather and my father and named for her. And it is a lovely, lovely pink clematis. I'll leave a link in the description where you can pop onto our website and see a photograph of my nanny. And Basil, thank you so much for that image. To you all, I hope you're all enjoying your gardens. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I've tried not to get it too long. I'm going to try and do these a little more often for you, and perhaps a little more professionally as I get more adept at it. So thanks ever so much for viewing. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye for now.